Newsmaker Sunday with Fox 10's John Hook.
Guys, you're wondering what the background is. We are going to make a complete departure today. We are going to talk about things from out of this world, UFOs. And since it's early in the morning, it's a great time to get off on a subject that many people, they're a little ticklish talking about it, frankly. But 36% of Americans, 80 million, believe UFOs exist. And a tenth believe they have spotted one. This is from a National Geographic poll. 17% said they did not believe in UFOs or unidentified flying objects, and nearly half of those surveyed said they were unsure. Put me in that category. I don't know what to believe. I believe there's life out there. I just don't know if we've been visited. But we're going to talk about it with two guys who were here for this massive UFO convention going on at Wekopa up in Scottsdale. Jeremy, is it Corbell?
Yep.
Jeremy Corbell is an investigative filmmaker. He's on the right of your screen. Ryan Sprague is a UFO journalist. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Usually when you do a news program, and we have politicians on, we have guys on all the time, are the journalists skeptical or fairly open-minded about this subject?
Well, you're a journalist. I'll let you.
Yeah.
That's a great question. I think as a journalist, it is your job to remain open-minded about the topic you're covering, especially when it comes to UFOs. There's such a broad spectrum of phenomenon that seems to be happening.
Right.
And I think by remaining open, that's when the journalists can really get to the core of the phenomenon and the people they're dealing with.
Jeremy, let me ask you. It seems that this is broken down into, out of 100% of sightings, and UFOs are only unidentified flying objects. That's all.
Correct.
We don't know what they are. It doesn't mean they're space aliens. They're just, we don't know what it is. It seems that when you break it down, the research I've done, 90% can be explained, and then you're left with 10% that can't really be explained very well. And that's where the rub is, right?
You make a really good point. Your intro, this is not about belief. It's either true or it's not true. If one sighting in the millions of sightings from credible Americans, people that have walked on the moon, like Dr. Edgar Mitchell,
right.
astronauts, pilots, if even one of these sightings is real, and it is in fact a craft of origin from somewhere other than Earth, just one out of the millions, then we have a real phenomena. Something's actually going on, but it's not a matter of belief. It's either true or it's not true. It can be an extraordinary belief until there's evidence. And so as an investigative filmmaker, that's what I try to do, is talk with people on the inside.
Let me go through, and this stunned me, okay? I just want to run down this list of believers, okay? Richard Nixon, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, Mikhail Gorbachev, Professor Stephen Hawking. Hawking, now, one of the theoretical physicists, one of the brightest guys in the known world, believes in UFOs and extraterrestrials, and in an interview said, of course, it's possible that UFOs really do contain aliens and are part of interplanetary craft of some sort. And my colleagues are confident that they do not originate in our solar system. So you've got a lot of guys out there, credible people, who are believers.
Yeah, we had a huge panel. It was called the Citizen Hearing, and one of my business partners, Reuben Langdon, we essentially documented the whole thing, and it was 40 different witnesses, from everywhere from astronauts to pilots. So people are coming forward, and people are saying, and finally, without ridicule, saying, I believe. But again, I stand to the point, it's not a matter of belief. It's an extraordinary...
This isn't religion.
Correct. It's true or it's not true. And so the idea is, if it is true, what does that mean, and to what degree is it true?
Okay, let me go through the list here. Ryan, let's start with you. What is the best proof that we have to date that we've been visited?
That we've been visited?
Yes.
That is a great question. You can look at experiencers such as Travis Walton.
Right here in Arizona.
Right here in Arizona. One of the best documented cases of all time.
He says he was abducted.
He says he was abducted.
In northern Arizona.
Yes. He's been put under polygraph tests. The other witnesses who saw this with him saw him literally be shot with a beam by a craft of unknown origin, were put under polygraph tests, and they all passed with flying colors.
What's the best you've got? Jeremy?
Yeah, the best evidence that I have, because, man, I'm looking for it, too. You know, I want the smoking gun either way. I mean, that's like, I have made some...
Well, this is what we deal with. We need proof, right?
Yeah, I've made some wild films. You know, I made a film called Patient 17 about a man who had an alleged implant that we removed physically, and I actually followed the whole process. Never thought I would do something like that. That didn't prove it to me fully, but I think what gives me the greatest sense of proof for myself to really, my imagination has been weaponized. And as a young child, it had been. I am so curious. I want to know. So the best proof that I have is essentially people of high credibility in positions to know have told me directly off camera and on camera that yes, it is true. There are intelligent life out there, that they are visiting our planet and engaging humanity. Now, I personally have no experience with that, but weight becomes heavy. Evidence becomes heavy over time. I don't have the luxury of disbelief, but what I do have is a camera, which is a passport into these stories.
And they'll tell you the story.
Yes, they will.
You know, quick aside on Travis Walton. I was doing a story back in '94 on winter sports up on the Mogollon Rim. And a guy gave us a ride on a snowmobile who had taken Travis Walton out to the area where he had been abducted. He took him out with a film crew. And here's what he told me. He said, I don't know whether Travis Walton was abducted or not. He goes, but let me tell you something. Travis Walton believes he was abducted. He said, I can tell you that for certain. Because as we got closer to where he was abducted, he started freaking out and actually demanded at one point that they stop and turn around. He got so agitated.
People pass polygraph tests on the people aren't lying. There's millions and millions of Americans that are seeing things in the sky that defy all known physics, and that's the important and interesting aspect.
We had it happen here, the Phoenix Lights.
Correct.
Can I show you that story
here?
I would
love to see this.
This is tape number 2. Yeah, this is one of the best known cases. Tape number 2, the Phoenix Lights.
This is the way the lights looked over Phoenix at about 10 o'clock last night.
This was our report 8 years ago, the day after the Phoenix Lights appeared.
There have been multiple descriptions, but the people up in northern Arizona saw lights that were distinctly red.
Another one, too. Oh.
Major sighting here
on the 13th of March. Weird happenings in the skies over Phoenix recently.
This, a new documentary film based on the book The Phoenix Lights by Lynn Kitai, MD. She's a Phoenix doctor.
I actually pushed my entire professional life aside for 4 years in search of an answer.
What really happened that night? Some believe the state of Arizona was visited by a parade of alien spacecraft, at least one of which was a large triangular vessel seen by thousands of people.
There was this huge formation of lights, V formation of lights.
The next thing you know, it was in a V shape.
And most UFO stories, they always talk about being round ships, but this was a big black triangle.
After months of saying nothing, the Air Force came up with their explanation, claiming it was flares in the sky that night, like these, dropped over the Barry Goldwater bombing range southwest of the valley. But Dr. Lynn Kitai's sightings began from her Paradise Valley home 2 years earlier, in 1995.
Both my husband, who's also a physician, and I, with no interest or knowledge in this topic at all, witnessed a very close sighting to our home.
3 amber orbs appeared outside their home's window.
I did get photos of it, wondered for 2 years what we saw, had no idea.
Then came March 13th, 1997.
The availability of witnesses was extraordinary.
Also featured in the documentary, UFO investigator Michael Tanner.
I was responsible for putting together the timeline and the whole summary of the events that took place on March 13th, 8 years ago.
The various sightings were reported that night from Kingman to Prescott, through Phoenix, down to Tucson, over a span of more than 4 hours.
The intent seemed to be clearly to demonstrate that they possess a technology that's so far in advance of our own that there's literally no contest.
Military sources tell Tanner that fighter jets from Luke Air Force Base did intercept the lights in the sky, as many eyewitnesses reported.
One officer we ran across said, without giving his name or allowing us to reveal his name, said it was the worst night of his military life. It was sheer pandemonium at Luke Air Force Base.
A topic explored in Kitai's documentary, where another officer comes forward.
I don't believe they're flare. I don't believe they're conventional aircraft. And I don't believe it's the military testing top secret craft.
I'm learning that this is happening worldwide.
what's going on here? What is this?
The mass sighting that night prompted Kitai to begin an investigation, knowing full well that publishing a book and now producing a film puts her professional reputation at risk.
There's been ridicule and snickering, and the witness accounts have not been taken as seriously as maybe they should.
This story comes from someone who was honestly seeking to know and understand the truth for herself, and at great risk to her professional standing, stature, and reputation.
But through her book and documentary film, Kitai hopes to help change all that, to convince others that it's okay to report sightings, that even without all the answers, the questions are still worth asking.
Just because we may not have the technology yet to definitively define what these things are, it doesn't mean they're not real. There are people that can't deal with this reality. It's time we get it out in the open, and that's why I'm doing this. And we address it, we accept it, and we study it.
By the way, in a recent interview with Governor Fife Symington, of course, he was one of the people who saw this, and he told me, I pressed him on it. He said, look, and he's a Navy aviator, right? He flew planes for the Navy. He said, all I know is what I saw, and it was not of this world. He saw it up by Squaw Peak. Yeah. Do you guys have a theory as to what was going on, and has the government explained this?
I honestly don't think the government knows what they're dealing with. We hear all the time about government cover-ups and black ops projects, but the simplest way to deny that it happened is to deny that it ever happened. But thousands of people saw the Phoenix Lights.
There's no doubt. I still get emails from them. Okay, yeah. let me play devil's advocate for a minute. If we were in the development of the B-1 bomber, okay, the diamond-shaped craft, right? When that was developed, if that was being flown over a metro area, people would have said, oh my God, what is that thing? It's not like an airplane, right? Yeah. Is it possible what we're seeing are craft that we're building?
Some of what we're seeing are craft that we're building, but the problem you have with that argument is that these sightings go back throughout history. You know,
oh, I've heard some from the 1600s.
Oh, absolutely.
Before anything was flying.
Discs, cylindrical-shaped craft. I mean, the entire experience that people are having where they're seeing these things, it's been going on since the beginning of recorded human history. So that theory just doesn't hold water, because eventually, and by the way, I mean, part of what I do is I interview, government witnesses. So I can tell you, matter of fact, that some parts of the government are just as confused as we are about the whole
Are they
experience.
scared? Is the government frightened of this?
That's a personal question. I mean, fear is a personal human thing. It just is one person scared because they are, extremely religious compared to another person that is just purely scientific. But I do believe the doubt, if there is another intelligent civilization contacting us that's more highly advanced, I mean, that's a problem. That's a problem for anybody, right? Because if they're not telling us the truth...
Because they're able to travel from insane distances.
With impunity throughout our skies. That is a problem for any nation. So it's a serious issue.
Does anybody talk about whether this, and this is really getting out there, that something from outside, I mean way outside, would be the catalyst that could bring the nations on Earth that are always in conflict together?
Ronald Reagan said that like 7 times in a bunch of his speeches at the UN, that a threat from an extraterrestrial presence would instantaneously unite humanity. So presidents have been talking about this. I mean, look it up. Ronald Reagan at the UN said those exact words.
So that's something that people think about quite a bit when we're in conflict around the globe.
If we were to have this disclosure of an ET presence, the implications are just astounding. Okay. Everything, religion, socially, everything.
If we've been visited, because we know kind of the makeup of at least within our, what will we say, our universe, our, we know that this has to be something coming from way, way beyond any kind of propulsion that we know of that could get you there and keep people alive or creatures alive long enough to get you there.
It's really interesting that you bring that up, because at this UFO Congress, one of the big highlights of the Congress is an individual named Bob Lazar. I have followed the case for many years because my mentor is George Knapp, who is...
I grew up watching him. He's a television news reporter.
Peabody Award-winning journalist. Right. He's amazing. So basically, I've been able to see it from a very unique perspective. Bob is coming in to talk at this conference. He claims that he back-engineered extraterrestrial technologies, propulsion systems, advanced propulsion systems that essentially warp space-time. They essentially amplify gravity waves in order to travel. The most incredible idea. And you know what? I just got to say on the record, after looking at this as an investigative journalist, I believe Bob. And he's going to be there to talk with everybody after 25 years of radio silence.
Okay, yeah, he's been silent on the issue because he didn't want to be hassled by people.
Correct. He's a private guy.
Okay, let me ask you this. When you say reverse engineer, did they have a piece of a craft that they were trying to figure out?
That is exactly as Bob tells the story. Yeah, and a number of people I've talked with who have been on the inside have also explained that to the T.
So there have been recoveries of craft.
We not only allegedly have recoveries, but we also have craft that may not even be damaged.
What about aliens?
You know, a lot
hear
of people
this story
talk about
Nixon taking Jackie Gleason to Homestead Air Force Base.
That's a great
and
story.
showing him aliens, but it may have been a hoax, but we don't know.
Look,
that he may have been pulling a prank on Gleason.
Let's not jump ahead, cart before the horse. If there are intelligent beings that created, you know, craft that are visiting Earth, because that's I think the big news, let's say, of the next 20 years, is that true? Are we being visited? Are they drones? Or do they have the intelligences that made them riding in them? And, you know, I want to know, too, if this is true, are there extraterrestrials visiting? And that would be
If you guys
amazing.
Find out, will you let me know?
I'll call you. I'll tweet it to the world. You know?
This would be the greatest story ever.
Ever, of all time.
All right, you may think I've lost my mind, but I'm having a ball with these guys. This is Jeremy Corbell on the right. He's an investigative filmmaker. Ryan Sprague is a UFO journalist. And as you can tell by the backdrop, we are just exploring what if here. I started the show by saying that 36% of Americans, 80 million people, believe that UFOs exist. A tenth believe they've spotted one. This is according to a National Geographic poll. Do you guys think that public sentiment is changing on this issue? That people have maybe gone from, oh, hogwash, nonsense, to, you know what, I don't know. Is that happening?
Yeah, I can see it happening every day, especially within the mass media. It's astounding how much it's changed. And
why do you think that is? Why is that?
I think as we draw closer scientifically, I mean, we're discovering all these exoplanets. NASA is sending an unmanned, you know, craft to Europa. These are opening up the possibilities of life elsewhere, whether it be biological.
I have a theory as well.
Yeah.
I think as we get smarter, we start to understand how much we don't know.
Yes.
And I think that's playing into it.
Yeah, and I think, you know, my personal opinion on it is that when I started talking to people about this when I was like 13 years old, so, you know, I don't know how many years ago, over 2 decades ago, people would almost laugh when you said extraterrestrials probably exist. The world view has changed. Now we know all these exoplanets, trillions of star systems with habitable planets. So the whole paradigm has shifted. What's the next thing? And now you're going to be ahead. Exactly. You're going to be ahead 10 years right now. What would the big deal be? What is the biggest lie? Well, if these things are real, are they coming here? So that's the question. If we can kind of narrow in the discussion to that now, rather than extraterrestrials don't exist, okay, well, we just have the one planet out of trillions and billions of billions that has life on it.
Well, then the question about UFOs, okay, maybe the question should be, do you believe there's life out there? That's a whole different thing, and you probably have a lot more people who believe that.
Well, I'm just saying that's the simple one that we should all be far beyond. You know, we should be, just the science of it, the sheer numbers, we should be beyond that question. The question we should be asking is, okay, there probably is life everywhere, microbial and intelligent. Are they visiting here? And if so, what are the implications?
Has anybody come up with a theory if we have been visited? Okay, I don't believe we have, but I'm keeping an open mind about it. If we've been visited, why have they not presented themselves in a more dramatic way and said, look, we come from planet X, here we are? Does anybody explain this?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, there have been tons and tons of cases of these supposed beings who may not think we're ready. We may be on some sort of timetable of theirs. We have to sort of look at it as if they are coming from vast distances and they are this ahead of us, you know, technologically and perhaps intelligently, that maybe we haven't reached that potential
to handle it.
Yet.
I get
we
that.
have enough issues to worry about on this planet.
Okay.
This is the last thing on a lot of people's minds, where it's one of the first on ours.
Yeah, I got to chime in here on this because so one of my dear friends growing up is Rod Roddenberry. Eugene Roddenberry is the son of Gene Roddenberry.
Yeah.
So I interviewed him for this conference, and I have a piece that I'm going to be playing at the conference where he's weighing in for the first time on the extraterrestrial issue. I mean, which is weird. You figure he'd weigh in sooner. But essentially, they talk about things like the prime directive, the idea of non-interference. And he kind of talked to me about this. He says, I don't know if it's just microbial life or intelligent life. He says, my preference is intelligent life. He says, but let's say they are here. Let's say they are visiting. Maybe there is a prime directive. Maybe there's a non-interference clause where they want us to evolve as human beings before, before
real contact.
Right, but there has been contact. That's the thing that you and I don't get because we haven't seen anything. But people, millions of people, have had what they call contact.
What is interesting about that, I got to take a break, is how similar a lot of these accounts are.
Oh my gosh.
There's a similarity with all of these different people who say they've seen something.
Yeah.
What they've seen a lot of times lines up. It's not the
multiple witnesses, multiple angles, air radar, ground radar, air visual, trained observers, pilots. I mean, come on.
Back on Newsmaker Sunday, final moments with Jeremy Corbell, an investigative filmmaker on the right of your screen. He's on the right here, and Ryan Sprague, a UFO journalist. Final moments. What would you like people to take away? And I know we've got the conference going on, and people, you're saying if people want to just drop by, do it.
I mean, what I personally want people to take away is, again, I want your imagination to be weaponized. This is not a marketing ploy. This is not, that's a lack of imagination. There is a true and real phenomena that is occurring. With a cursory glance, you will become interested, I guarantee. Just look into it. Personally, my films are seen at extraordinarybeliefs.com. You can see all this subject.
Extraordinarybeliefs.com.
Correct, and that's where you can see all my films on this subject matter that take a real hardcore documentary approach to figuring out if any of these stories are true.
Okay.
And that's what I have to say. So
Ryan,
go ahead.
what do you got?
I mean, just to piggyback off that, we have over 3,000 people who have already attended. We're expecting another 2,000 or so over the weekend. And people come from all over the world to this conference. And it's because we have astrobiologists, nuclear physicists speaking at the event, telling us this is a real phenomenon.
Next, I mean, next to questions about God and religion, this is probably right there, right? This is the existential question of, are we alone?
Yeah.
And people out there, I'm sure, believe we are not alone.
It's going to be easier to prove the existence of other intelligent life. It'll be easier to prove that than the existence of God to the mass public. I think that it's either true or it's not true. And hopefully one day soon we'll find out.
How much is the government, our government, working on trying to make contact?
It's a really
We're
complex
always throwing out stuff out to the universe, right?
We are from the very beginning. We shoot up messages all the time. I mean, it's like, yeah, but there's a much deeper story to that, and maybe we'll have to talk about that later.
How worried is, we've got 30 seconds, how worried is, for instance, the United States about this issue, that this is a threat that we could not handle?
I think that's a great question. We have people like John Podesta, who's currently come forward about regretting that he was not able to get the UFO information out to the public when he was working for Clinton and Obama.
He tried.
Did you see that tweet? Yeah, he just tweeted his biggest #1 regret. John Podesta.
I did see that.
Yeah, was that he didn't get disclosure. So the government is worried, of course, but the main thing is we need to know the truth.
Guys, thank you very much.